Greetings wonderful people, and welcome to another weekly video. Unfortunately, we live in a time where dreams often don't become realities, and the same can be said for the dreams of certain video games. Often video games are announced and never make it to release. Somewhere along the line people mess up, budgets run out, or new developers take over and the game disappears into what we know as development hell. Let's take a look at 5 games that never made it to retail and are still somewhere in the depths of limbo. Let's get started with Dead Island 2. You know there's that game that gets announced and everybody is super hyped for it, pre-orders go up and the release date is so close to the initial announcement that you just know it's going to release. Well, Dead Island 2 was that game. Back when the PS4 was announced, Dead Island 2 was one of those games that announced along with it. Sony put the pre-order pages up on the PlayStation Store and you could pre-purchase the game and everything. Yes, it was almost like the game was actually going to release, until it didn't. Months went by and the December of 2014 release date placeholder stood as just a beacon of light amongst the crowded games on the console. We hoped and prayed that it would make it, but alas, the store listing disappeared and then the game was not seen or heard of again. Since then, Dead Island 2 has been the game that we don't want to talk about, but when we do, it makes us all sad. Last we heard of the game was Deep Silver saying that it's very much alive, and this was back in May of last year. I suggest that we just erase that epic trailer that they had from our minds and stick to other things. Next up we have Agent. To think that Rockstar was actually working on something that was not GTA or Red Dead related, it's no wonder that this game never made it out of development. Back in 2009, Rockstar announced a new 1930s inspired spy game that would take place during the Cold War. Of course, gamers went wild as this would not only mean there was a new PS3 exclusive coming from one of the best studios in the world, but also a new game coming from that same studio. It's almost like the development of the game suddenly smashed into a brick wall and halted immediately, as Agent was never seen or heard of again from Rockstar themselves. The only time we've seen this game was when concept art leaked from a developer who worked on the game back then and put it up as a show reel. Agent is not happening, and I doubt we'll ever see it come out of the Rockstar development house again, and that is one of the most tragic stories in gaming. Next up we have Hull Raid. During the development of Dying Light, the team at Techland, yes the same guys working on Dead Island 2, announced an awesome looking medieval hack-and-slash FPS Elder Scrolls inspired game. This was probably one of the games that I was quite excited to get my hands on, as it was everything that we loved about fantasy RPGs but with the Dying Light feel to it. Hull Raid was announced in 2013 and it looked pretty great from the gameplay, and that's all we saw, but the developers clearly didn't think so. In late 2014, Techland announced that they were putting the game's development on hold to focus on building a better and more immersive Hull Raid game. The plan was to go back to the drawing board and start fresh. Since then we've not seen or heard anything about the game, but the studio continues to work on their 4-year-old Dying Light game instead. Hull Raid marks the second game from the studio that never made it to release in the space of a year. Maybe it's a sign for them. Next up we have Alpha Colony. In 2012, when Kickstarter was all the rage, Alpha Colony was listed as a game that was set to merge Catan and Mule into an awesome video game concept. It was exciting as Kickstarter back then was not as saturated as it is today and everything was heavily focused on and in the spotlight. The game ran in a crowdfunding system for a couple of months with a fairly decent goal of $50,000. Come the cutoff time for the game and you'll never believe it, but it was just short $28 to be fully funded. Yes, $28, which is about a day's worth of grocery shopping for food. The game never made it out of development, but according to the developer Christopher Williamson, it was a good thing as they actually needed $100,000 to make the game a reality but dropped it after realizing the expectations were too high. $50,000 would never have brought the game to life, and now it lives in that fiery place where other games rarely make it out of. And lastly, we have Deep Down. Move over Dark Souls, or that's what we were saying when the PS4 was first announced, and alongside it a game called Deep Down. This free-to-play dungeon crawler was going to be the RPG that we've all been waiting for, set in a digital world where you enter as a player and face off against massive dragons, freaky monsters and mimics. Yes, it's not a dungeon crawler without those things. The game was first announced in 2013, and soon after we saw a small glimpse of gameplay in 2014. Since then, the game has been missing in action. We wonder what it really would have been like and what sort of titles it would have rivaled today. If anything, it would have made for a fantastic free-to-play game, and did we mention it looked great? For the game announced in 2013, it was one of the most visually outstanding games at the PS4 reveal event. Guess we'll never see it come to life. Well, there you have it. 5 games that we'll probably never get to play even though we actually saw them at one stage. What of these games do you remember? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like, subscribe and all those tasty things. Until next time, farewell.